Good morning, this is Ms. DB. In this video we are going to look at subtracting integers. So there was another video on how to use the gizmo, which is on the left here, to show subtracting integers on a number line, and we'll use that to check some of our problems as we go, and the first few problems are using a number line. So again, remember that integers are the whole numbers plus their opposites, and we can use a number line to show the integers, and we can also use a number line to add and subtract integers. So if we are going to subtract using a number line, you are going to start at 0, and then we are going to go to the first number that's listed, and then we'll go to the second number that's listed. So our first number is 5, so I start at 0 and I go to the right until I hit 5. There's 5 right there. And then I have to subtract 8. So subtracting 8 tells us to go to the left. So I start at 5 where my first number was, and I have to go 8 units to the left. So there's 5 units, and now I need 1, 2, 3 more. So 1, 2, 3 more units, and then I would end up right here. That is the number -3. So according to my number line, I would get -3 when I take 5 minus 8. Let's check it using Gizmo. So I type in 5 for the first number, and then I want -8 for the second number. Oh, I want minus a +8. There we go. 5 minus 8, 5 minus 8. They match. The gizmo gave me an answer of -3, and my work gave me an answer of -3. The number lines look similar. Theirs is just a lot neater. I started by going to the right, and then I turned around and went to the left 8 units. All right. Let's look at what happens if we have some negatives for our first number. How about -5 minus 3? So -5, again, we're going to start at 0, and I'm going to go until I get to -5. Well, -5 is on the left side, so I go this way. And I go until I get to -5. That's my first number. Now it says to -3. Well, look back at number 1. When it said -8, I went to the left. I do have to go to the left because I'm subtracting 3. So I didn't mean to scribble on that. I need to go 3 more to the left. Starting at -5, I have to go 1, 2, 3 units to the left. 1, 2, 3. And I stop at -8. -5 minus 3 is -8. Let's check that on the gizmo. -5, and then I need to minus a +3. -5, -5, there we go. So I went to the left, -5, and then I went 3 more units to the left and end up at -8. So try these, and when you have the second number is a negative, make sure that you change that on the second number. We better look at one of those too, because it's a little tricky what you do. So in number 3, we start at 2. So it's a +2, so we go to the right 2. So we start at 0 and we go 1, 2 to the right, and we start at 2. Then it says to subtract -5. Well, subtract 5 would be go this way, but it says to subtract negative. Those two negative signs, the minus and then the negative, undo each other and tell you to change direction. So we started going to the left, but then I see that it's a negative and I actually have to go to the right. So I start out going to the left when I see the minus sign, but then I say, oh wait, it's a negative. I actually go to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's right here. And then I should end up at 7. Let's look at that on the gizmo. So we start at 2, and then it's minus, a negative 5. So here's our, we start at 0, we go 2 to the right for our 2, and then instead of going to the left for a minus, we go to the right because it's minus a negative. So we actually go farther to the right and get a 7. Okay, let's look at the rules. Here's the rules. Change the problem to addition by adding the opposite of the second number. Then you follow the rules for addition. And I have to add this rule in. Add the absolute values of the numbers. Alright, so we start out, let's look at this example up here. We start with 8 minus 2. We change this to 8 plus, we change the minus to a plus, and we change the 2 to a negative 2. The parentheses are just used so that we don't mess up and lose our negative sign. Here's another example. Negative 6 minus 2. We leave the first number alone. Negative 6 does not change. We change the minus sign to a plus sign. We change the 2 to a negative 2. We're changing to the opposite. One more example. Negative 6 minus negative 2. Leave the first number alone. Change the minus to a positive. Change the negative 2 to its opposite. The opposite of a negative is positive. So this becomes negative 6 plus 2. And then, once you have your addition problem, then you follow the rules that we used in the last assignment on adding integers. Let's look at some examples where we are going to rewrite these using addition, and then we will use the addition rules to add our integers. Alright, we'll start with number 5. Don't change the first number. Change the minus sign into a plus. Change the negative 9 into its opposite. The opposite of negative 9 is positive 9. Then use your rules for addition to solve this. Let's try another one. You're not done with number 5, you'll have to solve it. Leave the first number alone. Change the minus sign to a plus sign. Change the 10 into its opposite. What's the opposite of 10? It's negative 10. So now we have a new problem. Now to add 3 plus negative 10, you have to use this rule. They have different signs, and it says to add integers with different signs, subtract the absolute values. So that would be 10 minus 3, and then take the sign of the integer with the larger absolute value. So the 10, the negative 10 has the larger absolute value, so this will end up being a negative number. And you're going to do that with each of these. Rewrite as addition. You never change the first number. You always change the minus into a plus, and then you take the opposite of the second number. So what's the opposite of negative 4? It's positive 4. And then you add using the rules for adding integers. So do these carefully. Do them without a calculator, and then check with a calculator if you need to, and then fix the ones that aren't correct. But try to do them without a calculator to start with. You can also use, for the smaller numbers up to 10, you can use the gizmo to help you check. Alright, then the next section we are going to look at variable expressions that have a minus sign. So this is very similar to the last worksheet where we added variable expressions together. If we have 5x minus 7x, you need to figure out what the number part would be, and then since they're both a term with x in them, they have the same variable, so they're like terms, we can also combine that and put x after it. So in this example problem, we have 5x minus 7x. We need to figure out what 5 minus 7 is. So here's how you change that to addition. You leave the first number alone. You change the minus to a plus. You take the opposite of 7, which is negative 7. 5 plus negative 7, those are two different signs. So I find the absolute value of each. The absolute value of 5 is 5. The absolute value of 7, negative 7, is 7. And then I subtract the smaller one from the larger one to get 2. Then for a sign, to know whether it's positive or negative, I look back at my original numbers. This one had an absolute value of 5. This one had an absolute value of 7. 7 is greater than 5. So, and that was a negative, so this would have negative 2 would be the final answer for the number part. So when it's 5x minus 7x, then we would do that same process but with the x's, and we would end up with negative 2x for our solution. In number 17 it says negative 7c minus negative c. That's the same as negative 1c. If you ever have a variable written down with no number in front, there's a 1 there. It's just invisible, but you can add it. Let's look at number 17. It says negative 7c minus negative 1c. So I'm going to rewrite this as addition. I already wrote the first part, negative 7c, didn't change it. Now I'm going to change my minus sign into a plus sign, and I'm going to take the opposite of my second term. The opposite of negative 1c would be positive 1c. So I have negative 7c plus positive 1c. Let's use our rules. Our rules say that if we want to add negative 7 plus 1, these are different numbers, so I should subtract their absolute values. So the absolute value of negative 7 is 7. The absolute value of 1 is 1, and I need to subtract their values. That's 6. And I take the sign of the one that had the bigger absolute value. The absolute value of negative 7 had the greater, and that's a negative number, so my answer would be negative 6, and then don't forget to put the variable part back on it. So negative 6c. Alright, then there's just one problem to solve. It's about living in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which maybe some of you do, and it's a cold day, and then it gets even colder the next day. So we want to find out what is the temperature the next day when it's even colder than negative 2. And that will be a common occurrence in the winter in Minnesota. So if you have trouble with this worksheet, remember you can meet with me, you can email me for help, and we can use the gizmo to check answers, we can use our calculator to check answers, and we'll practice the rewriting as an addition sentence. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.